And with what's going on right now with the disclosure from the government, from the top down, and what's happening in the mainstream news, it's important for us to start having these gatherings to really talk about the consciousness behind this all and the true agenda, and not only that, the space people and what it's really all about. So we're bringing Paola Harris on today to have a discussion about this. Paola, are you with us?
Yeah, I am, Neil. And are you going to give me the question on the chat room, or are you going to talk to me?
I can talk to you. We fixed the
Oh,
problem.
cool. You fixed it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. All right. So, yeah, do you have an initial question, or do you want me to begin?
Let's I mean, I have your description here about the space family and the people visiting Earth. I want to get into that, but to start off, let's go ahead and talk about what's going on right now in the mainstream news. I really wanted to showcase a few different perspectives today to not just accept what has been shown to us, but really to critically think about what really we are seeing happening.
Okay, well, everybody is following Grant Cameron. I think you're going to interview him later, Neil. And basically, there is a progression of events. I mean, about a month and a half ago, you had the Tom DeLonge group come out and talk about UFOs being real and asking for money for the technology. So that's part one. So everybody remembers that's part one. And then all of a sudden, look here, all of a sudden the New York Times goes from that to talking about how it's a real situation and how black budget money is going into researching certain events. But what we need to understand is, that was just one event that the New York Times is talking about. And then we have all these pilots coming out. But if people have been doing their own homework, they know that 2009, Stephen Greer had the Disclosure Project, and I haven't heard Stephen Greer on radio yet. And also that in 2000, I think it was in 12, there was a citizen hearing in Washington, D.C. with 36 different military men from all over the world. And so the thing is that this has been going on for a long time. So if journalists wanted to do their homework, they would have gone backwards and looked at all the credible witnesses, and they would have gone backwards and looked at all the people that spoke. Thank God that CNN grabbed James Fox, because James Fox, when Larry King was on there, was a regular. So James Fox almost brought this into the mainstream because he was a regular on Larry King Live. Stephenville happened at that time, and then he had his movie, I Know What I Saw, and he had Fife Symington, and this was on CNN mainstream. And everybody watched it. I watched it and was so glad that they had James, because he knew people at CNN. So, he was able to sneak it in. But my question to you and everybody that's in the chat room is, why didn't it make any difference? And the reason is, I really believe it's the people, because the information has been out there for a long time, and anybody who does their homework, and anybody who even read the New York Times article in the mainstream, unless the people come aboard, it's not news. I mean, it's entertainment. So the people, if there was like a mass of thousands of people marching on Washington right now, it might get some attention. But just to put the stories up there, I mean, we've had them before. We've had stories up there before. We've had this going on before. What I believe is happening right now, because of the timing, and I look at the timing of all this, is number one, there's DeLonge. Number two, we're dealing with Pentagon money. So I think, and I tend to agree, that the reason why this is all happening is because they're getting ready to ask for the money to research UFOs based on replicating the technology and getting weapons ready to shoot at them. Does that interest me? Not really. I mean, I don't care about the craft and whether they're in the sky or how many are over New York and all this other data that we've been collecting. I've gone to looking at who's inside. And for me, the question of an intelligent human, of a person that's really thinking, is, if this is true, who is inside and why are they visiting our planet? And of course, I think Hastings was on, Robert Hastings was on. And why are they over nuclear power plants and nuclear bases? And I think they were going to ask Robert Salas to speak too. And why are they able to shut off our missiles with nuclear warheads? So in that framework, it's a matter of national security. And everybody says, well, if you use that card, then, at least you're talking about it. Yeah. So many people on Facebook put, oh, finally, my family doesn't think I'm crazy and we can have a dialogue. In that way, that your family doesn't think you're crazy and that mainstream is talking about it, it's good. But if we're looking at this as a national security issue and we're getting ready to shoot at them, it's bad. So I just want to read one thing that Clifford Stone wrote on his Facebook, after he saw the article. And because Clifford Stone, I published his book, Eyes Only, and he was the top speaker at my conference in Laughlin, Nevada, which is always in November. Next year's November 2nd to 4th. StarWorksUSA.com is where the announcement for that is. Clifford Stone was interviewed by George Nuri. And of course, he's asked, because he's crash retrieval, what did he see? How many crashes did he assist at? The answer is 12 crashes. He saw different kinds of beings, beings too. And so what Cliff said, and this is why I want to quote Clifford Stone, because he is a military man, credible, and he comes from the heart, said, my dear and close friend kindly shared this article, and I wish to also share it and pass it on. This gentleman is repeating many familiar things I've said in my talks. As I have said before, one of the concerns was that their very existence, they presented a potential threat to our national security. I have also stated that we were told that not all contact would be of a friendly nature, but there exists a reason for this, and it has nothing to do with our visitors being hostile towards us. I wish also to stress my conviction once again, for most of our visitors mean no harm to us. To be sure, we are more of a threat to them. God bless, Cliff. So this is a military man in the Army that is saying this. It's not just me. And I really think that with Blue Book saying that it poses no threat to, well, of course, I mean, we would have been destroyed a long time ago. After all our world wars, the atomic bomb and everything, it's logical that obviously they haven't destroyed us or done anything to destroy the planet. What my thinking is this is a move on the part of the powers that be, the people that manage the UFO situation. This is a move to get money, just like the DeLong situation is, to fund some kind of, it'll be overt now, not covert program, to either go after UFOs or to fight UFOs or to get these extraordinary weapons or to start a dialogue about enemy. So, and I'm very sad about that. So this is where I'm coming from because of the timing and because of the fact that nobody has talked about, no sensible human is even addressing who's inside.
So speaking about Clifford Stone, do you think that this disclosure of the $22 million budget going towards this program within the Pentagon on the 5th floor is just one compartmentalized faction of the ET phenomena? Could there be different programs? Is Clifford Stone a part of this program, do you feel, or is that something completely different?
No, he's not a part of this program, and neither are the people that I've interviewed in my books. They're not part of any program. What they've had is the experience, and they've had the courage to come forth and say, number one, UFOs exist. In the case of Clifford Stone, he is famous for saying there are 57 different races. Colonel Corso told me, and I wrote the book, Conversations with Colonel Corso, was the closest journalist to him. He also told me 52 different races, different species. And Clifford Stone said the reason why he said 57 was because he had a manual when he was working crash retrieval, how to give first aid to 57 different races. That means that you couldn't do the same thing with all of them if they were hurt. So then see, right now, Neil, what we're doing is talking about what's inside the craft. None of the conversation on TV and none of the conversation in the newspapers deal with the ETs or the extraterrestrials or the visitors, as Clifford calls them. It's all about the hardware. So right now, just look at it as hardware central. We're talking about hardware. Well, my book on Colonel Corso, which is called Conversations with Colonel Corso, is all about hardware because that's what he was in charge of. And he was Army too. He was Army and he was in charge of back engineering the hardware. And he said to me, and I have the film footage of it, and I will show it at my conferences this year. He said to me, and he said it on film, we were interested only in the hardware and weapons of war, he said. He said the greatest gift they ever gave us was the ET body, the actual ET himself, because he is able to travel in space and we are not. So I don't know if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, we have a question here. I'm just reading it right now. Okay, so Jason says, Jason is curious on what your take is on this. This is a collaboratory effort with Tom. Tom has spoken on government telling them that they discovered a life form. Roswell has truth to it based on his book, Secret Machines, but the group discloses information based on another lie, saying it started around 2007 to 2012 and started by Harry Reid. Why the mixed messages here from the same group of folks?
I haven't heard anything about the life forms. I haven't heard anything about life. If they really want to talk about life forms, they haven't done their homework because they would have called Cliff. He did crash retrieval. They would have called Don Schmidt, who did 99 different. He was in my conference in Laughlin this year too. Interviews on people involved with the Roswell crash, was seeing the bodies. I interviewed Walter Hott and Glenn Dennis, the mortician, about the bodies. If they want to do a discussion on life forms, why didn't they go there? Right. I don't know where they're going to invent life forms. You know, as far as where my research is going, I'm talking about the nuts and bolts, but my research in Latin America tells me, and I know for a fact, that there are people on those craft. They're no longer coming to the United States. Why would they bother when all they're looking at is the craft and how they can back engineer it and how can they use it for war? The people that are warning the planet and the contactees that are telling us about these people are in other countries, and they are basically telling us about the ecological disasters that we're going to have. And I know you're going to like this, Neil, and to raise our consciousness and to wake up. And raising your consciousness means wake up. Look at the total picture and see what part you can do to make it better. Right. Raising consciousness is the only thing left here.
Right. So I'm completely with you. It's very interesting that the whole entire push for this has all been around the technology. Even when To the Stars Academy released, it was all about, oh, the one thing they did not tell you was that extraterrestrials exist and we have had contact on this planet. However, they said everything around that in order to basically say that without saying that. And they're focusing a lot on the technology, and it's this whole linear perspective rather than who these beings are and what that means to our history as a human race and our future, Well,
anybody who has any kind of logical thinking is going to ask the question, who are they? Why are they here? Why are they here at this particular time? And these are the questions that we care about. I mean, whether they can replicate the craft and we can have UFOs of our own shooting down at other countries. I mean, are people really there? Is this what this is about? I looked at the group with Tom DeLonge, and, they think, again, well, this is the old thinking of the Cold War, that we could be #1 in the world if we could just replicate a spacecraft They are not the idealistic people who were under Kennedy that started Star Trek, that said, let's go out into the stars where no people have gone before. You know, Kennedy was very idealistic. Let's travel among the stars. Let's meet our neighbors. Let's be, you know, this idea. And you know, I've read so much on Kennedy, plus talked to people who have read the books on Kennedy, known Kennedy, and Kennedy did not want the United States to be the only ones on the moon. He wanted to go together with Russia, and that was one of the problems. I don't know how we can claim planets. The planets belong to other species, and those species are looking at us as human beings. They're not looking at us as you know, Russians and Chinese and Americans. They're looking at planet Earth, looking, you know, that's a species. A human is a species. No matter what his skin color, it's a species. We are a species. We are not different countries. And Edgar Mitchell is famous for his quote there. He said he wanted to grab a politician and grab him by the you know, the collar and say, look at the Earth. You know, can you see any borders? What are you fighting over? And it's such a beautiful planet. And I remember Edgar Mitchell saying that the politics of the planet separates humanity, when humanity is basically one species. So is anybody addressing that? No. What they're addressing is they need money to do their research. Well, God, we need money to do our research too. The ufologists have been working in this field. They've been working out of our own pockets. So what, we're going to build stuff? And that's what this boils down to. We're going to get all this money to build weapons and craft and everything.
So do you think there'll be a conversation, because I mean, it's out of the bag now. They've said it. They've even said that they've had a non-terrestrial alloy that they're storing. So do you feel that it's just going to pass, or maybe there'll be conversations now about, well, who are operating these vehicles?
Well, Neil, they're not doing this for nothing. There's a program here. There's an agenda here. And I've studied this for 30 years. So what I'm looking at is the dates that these things come out. In other words, when do they want humanity to start talking about it? They started with Tom DeLonge, so that's the date that one thing came out. Now this New York Times thing comes out. It's not finished. It's gonna, and there's reasons, there's an agenda that it's coming out like this, otherwise it would never come out. So there's an agenda. What Grant and a lot of us are trying to do, Richard Jones and so forth, and we're trying to figure out what the agenda is and how they're going, what else are they going to release and where is this going? But may I encourage your listeners, it is not about their agenda. It is not about what they're releasing. It is not about where it's going. It is about us and what we people of planet Earth want to have happen. Because I think the power really is in the people.
Right. So we have another question here. Do you expect any other countries to disclose pretty soon?
They're all disclosing already. I mean, England left all its files. There's so many files for Great Britain, you can't imagine. All its UFO files, including Rendlesham. Italy has on its Air Force website all the latest sightings. Ireland, released all its files. Brazil released its files. I mean, we have documentation from all over the world. What else? What else can we do? The problem is the United States is the most powerful. So if everybody said there were UFOs all over the world, all the governments, it wouldn't make any difference until the United States admits it. And so the United States looks like it's doing minimal disclosure, but with an agenda. I mean, people aren't going back in time and studying anything. They're just, they're not going back to the giant rock days. I had to do that. Looking at, do people understand that the Integratron was financed by Howard Hughes, who was the CEO of Pan Am, and Howard Hughes knew about UFOs and all that group in California in the 1950s and 60s. I mean, do they realize that a lot was going on in the past with contact, that the ETs were speaking through crystal radios to people until they were, you know, the frequency was shut down? One of the problems I have with my own field is nobody does any research backwards to find out why we got to where we are today. Because, you know, the fact that, you know, in the 50s and 60s, there was an Adamski. There's a brand new book I put on my Facebook. It is all documented. It's called We Are Here Without Passports. It is mind-blowing. It has so much information about the contact in 50s, around 55, 56, but that was when we had to make a decision about our, you know, explosions, about, you know, the H-bomb tests in the Pacific, about doing any more bombing, about our nuclear capacity. That was a place on the timeline where we had incredible, incredible contact in the United States. When they made the decision to let that go and let the military-industrial complex take over, when they made that decision, the ETs no longer came here. Why would they? I mean, if it's going to land you, first thing you're going to look at is the ship, kill the people inside and try to back engineer the ship. That is the thinking in the United States. It is not the thinking in Latin America.
Right, right. Okay, so Bob's asking, how can we reconcile these disclosure efforts with the claims evidence regarding to a 6-year-old secret space program as depicted by Corey Goode and Wilcock?
Well, I don't even want to get into that. You know, first of all, the Germans, of course, had a program. So did the Italians to back engineer. So if we're going to get German scientists, of course, we're going to have some kind of intention of using them for a program of that nature. But that in general, that program, the Gaia show and everything has become entertainment. It's become entertainment. It doesn't go any place but where it goes in the past, which Michael Sala does an excellent job of telling us how, you know, the back engineering and what the thinking was and so forth. But that stays where it is. That we need to go on. We need to go on to why, what the agenda is. And most of all, I encourage you, go to other countries, read what's going on in Latin America. Look at Grant Cameron's research. You know, he's just jumped on the bandwagon for Latin America and has most of the stuff that I've done down there. I did some research in Italy this year with the Amicizia, or the friendship case. Those beings didn't want to come back here when we made the decision for the military-industrial complex to take over the weaponization of space and the exploration as something that is not for scientific benefit, but mostly for power, And you know, you can't go out into space and want to conquer space because you want to be the most powerful. Hopefully there's enough people listening that would think that we'd like to go out to space to meet our cosmic neighbors. That's a whole other agenda. That is a whole other agenda.
So I'm an extreme optimist, and I hear a lot of people talking about a false flag and what could happen in regards to a holographic technology that shows this fake alien threat. And I feel that, as you probably know, we're going through this evolution of consciousness to a higher vibratory existence. So ultimately, I feel we're stepping into that world that the negative agenda will never play out. What are your takes on that?
No, are you kidding? It won't play out, Neil. It can't, because I don't think that the agenda is in our hands. I think that's an illusion. I think that most of the disclosures are in the hands of the extraterrestrials. I mean, there's a technology there. There is a different agenda there, and I don't think it's hostile. I just read you Clifford Stone's statement. I mean, God, that is a beautiful statement. There's no, it's in there. If they wanted to do something, they could shut down anything. You can't have. What kind of battle are you going to have with an extraterrestrial race? I remember Colonel Corso saying, it's like shooting cannons at them. You know, it's ridiculous. It's an illusion. It's not going to happen. But the problem is that we're on a planet that deals with money. So they want the funding to pretend that's going to happen. They want the money to get the toys to do the battle so it happens. But those cosmic cultures, those extraterrestrials, there's no way. I mean, what could you, we would have done it already. If we had deep space platforms, we would have done it already. I think the agenda and the disclosure, and somebody should ask why they don't do it, is in the hands of the ETs. It's not in our hands as a species. If the ETs decided to have a spaceship go over every airport in the world at the same time, like we had the O'Hare incident and how China was shut down the airport in Beijing at least 5 times this year because of UFOs, but we don't hear about that. If they decide to do that, go over the airport at the same time, that would be a show of power, but we would interpret that as some kind of takeover.
Right. Okay. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to transition into speaking more about the consciousness behind extraterrestrials, and maybe just any messages you have in the times that's going on right now, and just to kind of center us and align us with our own truth rather than the truth that they've been feeding us.
Well, first of all, I think everybody should read everything, and everybody should listen to everything, and I think everybody should make up their own minds. Don't let anybody tell you what truth is. Do your homework. And second of all, I've already taken a course, as you know. I've taken a road. I'm speaking in Manchester, England. I'm speaking in Italy and in Argentina. I've taken a road where I want to talk about the space people and what their agenda was in the 50s and 60s. And I want to talk about the Apunians, Ricardo Gonzalez's research, because he's meeting with these people even today. And they are giant people. I mean, they're 10 feet tall people who come off the ships. And some of the contacts have been in Shasta, some of them in Peru, some of them in the Andes where they have a base, some of them in Monte Perdido in Spain, and they have a very clear message. They tell us that this is about us, that we have to raise our consciousness and try to save this planet because, you know, taking us out of the Paris Accord was not the most brilliant thing to do. We are having ecological blowback from all of our ways of thinking and doing. And they are worried that we're going to destroy ourselves and the planet. And of course, we're linked. So when you do that, it also causes a problem or a ripple in their reality. And so I'm more interested in the messages, the contact messages coming out of other countries. And I'm trying, what I do, because I'm a journalist, is just try to get the testimony, get it written down, pass it to my office in Rome, which puts it out in X Times magazine, pass it to my website, paolaharris.com. And in working with Portal to Ascension, doing a few conferences where I can show exactly what's happening, show what the progression was from the 50s and 60s, and look at the actual extraterrestrials rather than the hardware. I'm not a hardware person, although, Neil, my book, Conversations with Colonel Corso, is all about hardware. But that book is based on audio tape, and the Colonel is telling the truth.
Right. So you're known to say that you know, we've dealt with the nuts and bolts for quite some time. All the documents are there. What's the next step? The next step is to have these individual contact experiences and really connect to the higher consciousness. Would you agree?
Yeah, Neil. I mean, how many UFOs do we need to see? I mean, you know, look at MUFON's list, and they do a great job with data. But I mean, knowing how many UFOs are over New York in December is not going to change the world. You know, it's the data is all there. Even the people that have done the disclosure now know there's enough data. The data has been going on forever. We have so much data, even dating back to the 2009 Disclosure Project. So now what do you want to do about it? The question to everyone that's listening is, what do you want to do about it? I mean, do you want to now take the next step and look at what this means, look at the timing, look at what it means, what the messages are, what the contact represents. Do you want to do that? Which is much more, for me, much more productive than looking at how much money is being made, or, it's obvious that taxpayer money, black budget projects, all this, it's forever. We can't do a whole bunch about that, but we certainly can do a lot about the way that we look at the cosmos. We could do that because it's a reflection of ourselves.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you, Paula. And since we have you on right now, we take a few moments and talk about the fact that we're going to be doing some events together coming up next year. We're going to be traveling a bit. And what are you going to be discussing at those events? Do you have any idea, with what's going on right now and what you feel more focused on? What do we need to be discussing next year?
Well, I can only discuss what I know. I always put research is not an opinion. I can only discuss my research in Latin America and the many, many, many interviews I did. It's in my book, All of the Above and Beyond. People want to read all the interviews of the Latin Americans, which was not easy because I don't speak Spanish. And I will tell you what they told me the extraterrestrials are concerned about. I will also tell you how they behave in Latin America, also in Europe. And I will kind of go back to the past to talk about our space brother movement. And the titles that I gave you was Friends in High Places, which is another view, but it's not because I'm thinking about this or I made it up. I had to do heavy research with witness testimony and going back and connecting dots in order to do the seminars we're going to do. So it's called Friends in High Places, looking at the extraterrestrial messages.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you for all you do, your research, and your tireless commitment to spreading awareness and truth. So appreciate you very, very much.
Well, thank you. And people just need to go on my websites, paolaharris.com. It's in 4 languages. And of course, we're encouraging everybody to come and meet these new people talking about UFOs. All new information next November, and that's starworksusa.com. Go on that website to see the conference, which is called the Return of the Star People. It's going to involve Native Americans. So, I'm just going on with this new kinds of research.
Awesome. Thank you, Paula. You have a beautiful day. Thank you for coming on.
All right. Thank you, Neil. Thank you to everybody.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of this first event for today. Thank you again, Paola Harris. We will go ahead and put this out on the internet very soon. So in about 20 minutes, I just posted another link in the chat room right there. In about 20 minutes, we're going into another Zoom webinar room, and we're going to go live with Grant Cameron and Steve Bassett. They're going to be here for the first round. And then Jordan Sather from Destroying the Illusion is going to join us right afterwards. And then we're going to be followed with Eric Dadmer. So we're going to have 4 different perspectives. In the next webinar, probably go for an hour and maybe 2 hours. So again, before I close the room, go ahead and check that out right there. And I'm going to close out of this room now and log in the other one so you guys can start getting in there. Okay, see you in a bit. Bye-bye.